parking lot right now.
I'm so sorry.
Pull over!
Oh my gosh, please don't yell at me, sir.
Pull over now! I'm not repeating myself. Get out of the roadway and pull over. License and registrations now.
I thought you were leaving.
No,
before.
this means stop. This means stop.
I didn't see that until I was already past.
And then you still drove by me.
I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't.
License and registration now.
Hold on. Sorry. Give me a second, okay?
No, license and registration now.
Okay.
You almost ran over an officer standing in the middle of the street.
I'm so sorry. I didn't realize what was going on. That was very confusing.
Hey, you almost ran me over in the middle of the street.
Officer Hinkle screams at the driver for failing to stop at his signal, even though the driver explained that she was confused and thought she was free to travel through the intersection. The dashcam footage of the incident shows that while Officer Hinkle did raise his arm towards the driver's vehicle, it does not appear that he complied with traffic direction best practices when attempting to signal to her to stop. According to the basic traffic control procedures for law enforcement officers issued by the Maryland Police Training Commission, a common method a patrolman can use to stop traffic involves the officer looking directly at the driver, extending their arm, and pointing their finger at the driver. Then, the procedures suggest that the officer maintain this position and watch the driver until the signal is observed. Once the driver sees the signal, the officer should raise their hand so that their palm is toward the driver and hold this position until the driver stops. Similarly, a guide on using hand and arm signals to direct traffic, published by the Virginia Defense Force, instructs officers who are directing traffic from the right to turn left to start by looking to the left and thrusting their left hand towards the traffic, with the hand flat and above the officer's headgear and the palm facing traffic. The instructions also direct the officer to, quote, allow the driver time to react and bring his vehicle to a stop. Finally, the Seattle Police Department manual states that, quote, it is important that officers position themselves so that their hand signals can be seen from a long distance, and that, quote, officers should use an open hand palm out sign to indicate stop. In this instance, the dashcam footage shows that Officer Hinkle did not maintain eye contact with the driver to ensure she noticed his signal and stopped. In fact, he only quickly glanced in her direction and then turned his head to face oncoming traffic. Likewise, instead of fully extending his palm in the driver's direction, Officer Hinkle did not flatten the palm and only extended it in a claw-like position facing the ground.
Out of your car and stand next to the fender.
Sure.
Leave your purse in the car. Where do you work?
I work for a clothing company in California.
What are you doing here today?
I'm going to Target.
You're going to Target.
Yeah, to do a pickup.
What is such an important factor that me standing in the middle of the street,
Sir, I
stopping you, and you try to run me over?
Sir, I swear.
And then you looked at me, you waved at me, and then you kept going
I
anyway.
swear I was not trying to run you over. I thought the cars were going.
I'm telling you to stop in the middle of the
didn't see
street,
your
and you
hand.
wave at me and keep going.
I saw your hand before, and it was too late to stop. And
No,
I
it
put my
wasn't.
hand
You
up
were doing
saying,
10 miles an
sorry.
hour and you still drove by me.
I'm sorry.
You didn't even attempt to stop your car.
Sir,
You're lucky you're not in handcuffs right this second.
I'm very sorry, sir. I really.
Explain to my kids why they don't have a dad a week before Christmas, because you're trying to run somebody over.
Officer Hinkle repeatedly claims that the driver was trying to hit him, even though the dashcam footage from his cruiser shows him lunging toward her vehicle as she drove by, and tells her she's lucky she's not in handcuffs.
Run her, please, and make sure she's valid. Would you mind filling this out for me? My hands are a little shaky right now. Failing to obey a signal of the officer. Reckless driving.
Officer Hinkle asks one of the other officers to fill out a citation for failure to obey an officer's commands and reckless driving. Under Section 14-223 of the Connecticut General Statutes, which defines the offense of failing to stop when signaled or disobeying the direction of an officer, quote, whenever the operator of any motor vehicle fails promptly to bring his motor vehicle to a full stop upon the signal of any officer in uniform or prominently displaying the badge of his office, or disobeys the direction of such officer with relation to the operation of his motor vehicle, he shall be deemed to have committed an infraction. Recklessness requires a conscious choice of a course of action, either with knowledge of the serious danger to others involved in it, or with knowledge of facts which would disclose such danger to any reasonable man. Recklessness is more than negligence, and more than even gross negligence. In the 1999 case of State versus Sandra O., the Appellate Court of Connecticut clarified that, quote, it is reckless indifference to the safety of others which supplies the criminal intent necessary necessary to warrant conviction. While speed alone may be insufficient to warrant a conviction for reckless driving, it may be taken into consideration in conjunction with other circumstances to show a reckless disregard of consequences. Here, while the driver may have failed to stop when signaled, although it is certainly questionable whether Officer Hinkle's hand signals were sufficient to communicate in order to stop, it is unlikely that she could be found guilty of reckless driving for simply misunderstanding the situation, because she would not have the reckless mental state that is necessary to sustain a conviction.
I mean, if he has his lights on, it means something's odd. You gotta get
I'm very sorry.
What were you doing in your
I was
vehicle?
paying attention to the cars in front of me.
There were no cars in front of you. There were 0 cars in front of you. You were the only vehicle traveling on that road for 500 feet. There were no vehicles in front of you.
Okay.
No, there wasn't.
Okay. Okay.
You need to calm yourself.
The driver was issued a citation and allowed to leave the scene, and the charges were later dropped. This incident sparked an internal affairs investigation into Officer Hinkle's conduct, and he was immediately placed on paid administrative leave. On January 9th, 2023, Officer Hinkle was terminated from the Waterbury Police Department after the investigation determined that his conduct, actions, and behaviors were in violation of department policies. In an official statement on the termination, Chief Fernando Spagnolo noted that, quote, "His conduct during this encounter with a citizen of the community is unacceptable and not representative of the men and women serving the Waterbury Police Department. WPD officers are trained to demonstrate the highest level of professionalism when performing their duties." Overall, Officer Hinkle gets an F for using unclear hand signals when directing traffic, and then flying into a rage when a citizen misunderstood the meaning of those signals, and screaming at a citizen and directing profanity toward her. Officer Hinkle's response not only demonstrated a tremendous amount of anger and a total lack of professionalism, but it also revealed the type of so-called victim mentality that can be dangerous when left unchecked in a police department. Instead of seeing this incident as the honest mistake it truly appeared to be, Officer Hinkle took the driver's actions personally, accusing her of attempting to kill him right before Christmas, when in reality her vehicle actually came nowhere close to hitting him. These over-dramatic statements, as well as his unprofessional behavior, suggest that Officer Hinkle does not have the steadfast temperament that's necessary to be an effective police officer. The driver gets an A for maintaining her composure throughout the encounter, despite Officer Hinkle's immensely unprofessional behavior, and attempting to take responsibility for her actions, even though it is questionable whether the miscommunication was actually her fault. While it is possible that she was not paying enough attention to the road to notice Officer Hinkle, there is no way I can assess this based on the available footage. The driver claimed that she was confused about what she was supposed to do, and this seems reasonable given the fact that oncoming traffic was driving through the intersection, and considering the lack of clarity in Officer Hinkle's hand signals and the lack of attention he gave to ensuring she understood his commands and stopped her vehicle. Once the driver realized her mistake, she immediately pulled over and apologized profusely for the error, and remained respectful and relatively calm when faced with screaming and profanity from Officer Hinkle.